The Vain Girl and the Handsome Visitor. My grandmother Goya used to pass on dichos, sayings, and tell stories to teach lessons. Since I was a very mischievous little girl, I did not want to listen to her stories. When she would start to tell a story or repeat a saying, I would try to get out of there. If I could not leave, I would simply would not pay attention. I was never obvious about it, or I would have gotten in trouble for being disrespectful. I just drifted in my mind. When I started traveling around telling stories, different versions of the stories kept getting old. Everyone tells the story as though it happened in their village, so it is treated as a sort of urban legend in many Latino communities. One woman told a version where the building fell down. She said to the group, "And if you don't believe me, you can go to my village and see the rubble of that building." As I learned and heard this story over and over, I realized I'd heard longing before. It was one of those stories my grandmother had told many, many times. Once in a small village in Mexico, there lived a very beautiful young woman named Evita. She had long, dark hair, big brown eyes with long eyelashes, and beautiful red lips. There was a problem though. She knew she was beautiful. She would look in the mirror and say, "Ay, soy tan hermosa." Oh, I am so beautiful. Then she would open her eyes wide and flutter her eyelashes and say, "Y mis ojos son tan hermosas." And my eyes are so beautiful. Then she would smile into the mirror and say, "Mi sonrisa es tan bonita, con mis dientes blancos." My smile is so pretty with my white teeth. Her mother would watch with concern. "You shouldn't do that, Evita," she would say. "You should have more humility. Vas a ver. You will see." "Oh, Mama, why can't I say that? You know and I know that I am beautiful." Whenever Evita walked along the road and noticed a young man watching her, she would flutter her eyelashes at him, and he would almost faint. If she wanted to drive one of them young men crazy, she would swing her long, beautiful black braid from one side to the other while she looked at him. Sometimes, if the young man was sitting on the fence, he fell off. All the men sighed because they were so interested in her. Every Sunday, everyone in the village, young and old, would go to the tardeada, afternoon dance. One by one, the young men came over to ask her to dance. She would look them up and down and then say, "No, gracias. No, ni modo. No, thank you. No way." She'd mumble to herself, "Demasiado alto, demasiado corto, demasiado flaco, demasiado gordo. Too tall, too short, too skinny, too fat." Her mother would say to her, "You should not act like that. Vas a ver, you will see." Evita did not say anything, but she thought to herself, "Why should I be humble? I am beautiful." One afternoon, a very handsome stranger walked into the tardeada. Was underway. He was tall with a beautiful smile. His clothes were all black. Oh, he wore a hat and boots with silver trim. He took one look. Evita took one look at him and said to all the girls, "He's mine." But the stranger did not dance with her. He asked other young women to dance, but did not so much look at her way. Everyone noticed what was going on and whispered to each other. Evita went home quite stunned. How could this happen? She thought to herself, "I'm the most beautiful in all the village. I will make him ask me to dance. I will make myself a dress so beautiful that he will not be able to resist me." She worked all week on a beautiful yellow silk dress with the full skirt off the shoulder sleeves. She did not sleep very much that next week because that handsome stranger walked through her dreams in his black and silver boots. That next Sunday she wore her yellow silk dress. She wore her braid up in the crown with a yellow flower in it. She carried a fan of many colors in front of her as she walked into the tardeada. When she walked in, all the men, young and old, stared at her with their mouths hanging open. Everyone waited, anxious to see what was going to happen. The handsome man finally arrived. He walked in and stood at the door looking at everyone. Everyone looked at the handsome stranger, and then they looked at Evita. Then he began to dance with everyone around her again. Evita sat with her head lowered, gazing at the ground, trying not to look at him. She could not believe that he was not asking her to dance or even coming close to her. By this time, everyone's watching and whispering and giggling behind their hands. "Did you see? He didn't ask Evita to dance." The other girls giggled. "He didn't ask Evita to dance." Again, Evita went home wondering about this handsome, mysterious man. She thought, "I will make myself a beautiful red dress that he will not be able to resist." The next week, Evita worked night and day on a new dress. She did not dream of the stranger very much because she could not sleep. But every waking moment, she kept wondering about him. The next Sunday, Evita dressed in a beautiful red dress. She took her hair down and it flowed down her back in cascades. When she walked into the tardeada, everyone stopped to look at her. The men all sighed at the same time. Again, the mysterious handsome man appeared. He did just as he had done before. Ignoring Evita, he danced with all the other young women, including her own sisters. Why is he dancing with everyone else? She asked herself. I am the most beautiful girl in the village. But tonight was different. On the very last dance, he came over to her. He extended his hand and said, Un baile, por favor. A dance, please. Evita stood up, took his hand, and they began to dance. It was just as she had dreamed. They fit perfectly together. He spun around and around, and she felt as though they were floating. Her eyes were closed as she was enjoying the dance a great deal. Suddenly she heard a scream. She looked around and saw people running and screaming through the dance hall. She looked up at the handsome man, but he wasn't so handsome anymore. Now horns were coming out of his head, and his eyes were red. She was terrified. As she screamed, she leaned farther back and saw that he had a tail and that his feet had claws like a rooster's. Evita realized that she and this terrible stranger were floating off the ground. She pushed away from him with all her might, and she made him lose his balance. When she fell to the ground, she scrambled to her feet and ran as fast as she could. But she could hear him chasing her from behind and screaming, Evita, Evita! He was catching up with her, and she could almost feel his breath on her back as he screamed, Evita, Evita, Evita! She ran to the only place she could think of to go. She reached the church, dashed the door, locked it behind her. He banged on the door and screamed, Evita, come out of here. Evita, Evita. He banged and called out her name many times. Evita sat in the church, praying and crying. She was so scared. Finally, he left. In a while, she heard a knock on the door. Open the door, Evita. It sounded like her mother. But she said, how do I know it's you? The voice said, Evita, yo te dije. I told you. Evita knew it was her mother. She opened the door and fell into her mother's arms, sobbing with relief. After that day, Evita danced with everyone who asked her to dance. She was much more gentle and kind to everyone, too. The strange visitor never returned, but Evita never, ever forgot him.